Right now, someone sitting nearly 3,000 kilometers away could make your next grocery bill more expensive without ever setting foot in your country. That sounds impossible. If a missile lands in the Middle East, why should the price of milk, petrol, or even your next Amazon order suddenly go up? But that's exactly what happens. Because modern wars aren't just fought with soldiers anymore, they're fought with supply chains. Every time tensions explode between the United States and Iran, the world holds its breath. Not because everyone expects World War III, but because investors know something most people don't. The fastest weapon in this conflict isn't a missile, it's fear. Within minutes, oil traders react, shipping companies react, insurance companies react, stock markets react. Before the first bomb even hits the ground, the global economy has already started paying the bill. And eventually, so do you. But here's what's strange: oil isn't the biggest problem. It's a tiny stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, it's only about 21 miles wide. Yet, roughly one fifth of the world's traded oil passes through it every day. One narrow passage connecting a huge share of the world's energy supply, which means one threat can move prices across the entire planet. Iran doesn't need to defeat the United States military. It only needs markets to believe this route might become dangerous. Because markets don't wait for events, they price in expectations. When traders fear oil could become harder to transport, they start buying. Prices rise, even if not a single barrel has stopped flowing. And that's when your money quietly starts disappearing. Because oil isn't just fuel, it's hiding inside almost everything you buy. So, where does all that expensive oil actually go? Most people think the answer is petrol, but that's only the beginning. Take a simple carton of milk. The farmer uses diesel powered machinery. The milk travels in refrigerated trucks, through warehouses, distribution centers, and finally, your local supermarket. Every step depends on fuel. If diesel suddenly costs 15% more, every business in that chain adds a little to the price. And by the time the milk reaches your shopping cart, you're paying for a conflict thousands of kilometers away. Now multiply that across phones, clothes, medicine, electronics, and almost everything else that moves around the planet. Suddenly, inflation makes a lot more sense. But here's why the story changes. Higher oil prices aren't the hidden cost, fear is. Imagine you're running a shipping company. Your cargo ship has to sail through waters where missiles or drones might appear. Even if nothing happens, insurance becomes more expensive. Now multiply that across thousands of ships carrying food, cars, and smartphones. Trade becomes more expensive without a single ship being attacked. These costs don't disappear, they quietly flow downhill until they reach the final customer, you. But America didn't stop with military pressure. It also used the global financial system. Sanctions made it harder for Iran to sell oil or access international finance. Instead of stopping trade completely, many transactions became far more complicated. Middlemen appeared, supply chains became harder to verify. Banks spent more on compliance. Companies spent more on checking suppliers. More paperwork, more delays, more cost. And every extra dollar spent somewhere along the supply chain eventually shows up in somebody's bill, usually yours. But some economists believe those sanctions may have started something America never invented: a slow shift away from the US dollar. So, why does that matter? For decades, one of America's biggest advantages wasn't just its military, it was its currency. Because oil has largely been traded in US dollars, countries need to buy energy and conduct international trade. That created constant global demand for the currency. But when sanctions become a geopolitical weapon, other countries start asking the same question: what if we're next? If the access to the dollar can be restricted, depending on it becomes a risk. So some countries have started experimenting with alternatives. China has expanded the use of its own currency in some energy trade. Regional payment systems have grown, and governments have looked for ways to reduce dependence on traditional dollar based financial networks. None of this means the US dollar is about to disappear. It remains as the world's dominant reserve currency. But economic conflicts don't always end when the missiles stop. Sometimes they permanently change how countries do business. And that's what makes the US Iran conflict so unusual. Most wars destroy buildings. This one quietly changes incentives, shipping routes, insurance prices, supply chains, banking systems, even the way countries pay each other. You don't notice those changes overnight, you notice them months later when everything feels just a little more expensive. Think back to where we started. A drone launches, a threat is made, or a tanker changes course thousands of kilometers away. It seems disconnected from your weekly shopping bill. But beneath the headlines, markets are already reacting. Businesses are already adjusting prices. Banks are already reassessing risk. And eventually, these costs reach the only person who can't pass them on, the consumer. That's why the real battlefield isn't only in the Middle East, it's inside the global economy. Every headline, every sanction, every disruption sends tiny shockwaves through a financial system that touches almost everything you buy. Most people never notice, they just assume prices went up. Now you know there may be much more happening beneath the surface. Because in modern wars, the biggest casualty isn't always a country, sometimes it's your purchasing power. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more and click the video on your screen to explore another decision that changed history.